The film begins in the city of Miami, USA, where we will be shown with the hustle and bustle of the luxurious lives of human beings who are having fun. There, a waitress named Julia is busy delivering drinks to visitors. Here there is also a man who has been paying attention to Julia. Shortly after that, Julia's friend said that Julia was currently called by her boss. When Julia went to her boss, it turned out that her boss wanted to introduce Julia to the owner of an agency named Jacob who had been paying attention to Julia. Then the agency said that he was very interested in Julia's sexiness and beauty, so he intended to recruit Julia to become his model and for a fantastic fee. If Julia was willing, then starting tomorrow they would do a photo shoot, and if Julia didn't want to, Jacob wouldn't force her either. Julia, who really wants to be a model, of course she agreed to this.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Exactly. And I always did say to you.
Then Jacob gave his address to Julia because starting tomorrow they will do a photo shoot. In another place, a burly, muscular man calls someone to talk about his race car business. The man's name is Yuri, Julia's father. He's also a former Russian military special forces officer and former personal bodyguard to the US defense minister. He is one of the bodyguards of the most powerful crime boss in Moscow. Due to such a dangerous track record of work, Yuri became very protective of his daughter Julia and always prioritized her safety over his own. Yuri often spends most of his time minding his own business, as he has many rivals in the business field he is in. So he rarely meets Julia in person and only communicates through video calls. Elsewhere, a white-haired man named Charles is having a business meeting with a man named Kim. Charles is the boss of the most powerful gangster group in Miami City and plans to run a new, highly beneficial illegal business. That night, after Julia came home from work at the bar, she called her father and asked him to celebrate this year's Christmas Eve together. This is because Julia and Yuri have not lived together since the divorce between Yuri and his wife, Max. That was the reason why both of them rarely saw each other. And Yuri was still so busy with his racing car business that he didn't have much time for Julia anymore. After talking for a long time with her father, Julia immediately hung up and promised to call him again tomorrow. The next day, two of Kim's henchmen came to Charles's place to carry out a transaction on an illegal business that they had previously agreed to. But unfortunately, one of Kim's henchmen was attacked by Charles. Charles suddenly stabbed Kim's henchman in the stomach with a knife. Meanwhile, another Kim's henchmen were immediately beaten by Charles's men.
Hello. Go ahead.
He should be more careful.
Charles was offended and disrespected that Kim had not come to see him in person, then threatened Kim's henchmen to tell Kim to come to see him in person. On the other hand, Yuri, at work, looked worried because he still hadn't got a message from Julia. While Julia, in another place, is doing a photo shoot at a bar with a very sexy and sensual pose. The other girls in the photo shoot were seen wearing very sexy clothes. At the same time, Yuri coincidentally listened to the radio broadcasting news. In the news, it is stated that the government is starting to talk about the city of Miami, which has more and more human trafficking syndicates. This syndicate group trafficked many women into prostitution circles. It is known that the trade syndicate often deceives its victims by promising wealth and fame. They manipulate their victims to make them believe in them.
Beach is a huge destination. Crime scene photos from Miami Beach.
Yuri heard the news and became even more worried about his daughter's safety. He immediately rushed to where Julia worked to ask where she was. One of Julia's co-workers said Julia was last seen out for a photo shoot with an agency. And she looked very drunk when she came back from the photo shoot agency. In fact, during this time, Julia rarely drank until she was very drunk. But Julia's co-workers thought she was drinking to celebrate something and didn't feel the slightest bit suspicious.
Embarrass my daughter.
No, I won't. I understand.
I'm too worried.
Yuri, who heard all that, felt something was wrong with his daughter and immediately went to the place of his ex-wife, Max. When he arrives at Max's house, Julia still hasn't returned home, so he and Max tried to track Julia's location with GPS. Based on the GPS tracking, Julia was in a bar called Hammond.
It came online.
Max then says that Julia was probably just partying with her friends. But then again, Yuri still wasn't sure his daughter was safe if he hadn't seen it by himself. Yuri immediately went to Hammond to find out where his daughter was. When Yuri arrived at the bar, he immediately looked for Julia's location. But when he was about to enter the room with Julia's GPS signal, several guards blocked him and prohibited him from entering the room. Yuri quickly slammed the guards down one by one and broke the room's door.
Oh my god.
Fuck your dog!
Like I said!
Yuri found a photo of Julia among the many photos of the girls being trafficked at the bar. He became furious and immediately beat all the guards in that place. Epic fights between Yuri and all the bar guards were unavoidable, and he could easily defeat them all. Because of the big commotion at his bar, Kem came and purposely tricked Yuri until he was off guard so that Kem's henchmen could hit him from behind.
I'm gonna clean all this up for you.
Yuri was instantly unconscious and immediately taken to a beach to be beaten until he couldn't move anymore before he was finally drowned in the sea. When Yuri's body had sunk and was barely helpless anymore, he could faintly see his daughter's reflection in the water. Yuri felt that he should not give up because he had to quickly save his beloved daughter. Elsewhere, Julia tried to get out of bed after she had a pretty bad hangover. Shortly after, Kem came to offer Julia a drink. Meanwhile, Yuri managed to survive despite suffering severe injuries. He then went by car from a foreign man and immediately contacted his friend named Luis. Yuri asked Luis to find out all the information about Hammond's bar. Upon further investigation, Hammond's bar turned out to be one of the many places where young girls were trafficked. The act of trafficking is controlled by the most influential gangster group in the city of Miami. On the other hand, Julia and her friend began to feel something was wrong with the agency that hired them. But Julia realized it too late, and had to accept that now she and her friend had been trafficked. The scene returns to Yuri and Luis, who come to the house of one of their military friends to collect weapons and ammunition that will later be used against the human trafficking syndicate. Yuri no longer cares about his own safety because he still has to save his daughter. He will continue to search for his daughter even if he has to fight against Miami's most powerful gangster group. That night Yuri came to where Kem and all his henchmen were. After Yuri managed to kill all of Kem's henchmen with poison gas, he found two girls who were victims of human trafficking. So he immediately contacted the authorities to pick up the two girls and take them to the hospital. Unfortunately, Yuri couldn't find his own daughter in that place because Kem had already moved Julia to another place. On duty at her workplace, Max gets news from her friend that Yuri is preparing to fight a trade syndicate with Luis. Hearing this, Max immediately realized that her daughter was in danger, and she immediately left her job. On the other hand, Charles and his men named Oliver planned to arrest and attack Yuri, causing his illegal business to suffer huge losses.
Secretary of Defense was the top crime boss in Moscow.
People talked about him like he was some kind of legend.
At the same time, Yuri was preparing himself before facing the entire gang of gangsters who had taken his daughter. Luis advised Yuri not to come alone to the gangsters' place. Luis has just discovered that these gangsters is above the law, and has been protected by the governor of the city of Miami for nearly 20 years. Yuri refused because he didn't have much time and needed to save his daughter immediately. That night Max came to Yuri's place and immediately asked about her daughter's location. Before Yuri could answer, his friend, a former military soldier, came with the henchmen to attack him. Fortunately, Yuri and Max could easily defeat them all.
Special Forces.
It turned out that the attack that night was part of Charles's plan to kill Yuri before Yuri could find him. The next day, Yuri and Max tried to contact Max's police partner, who is on duty in the port area, to find out where Julia is. However, Max's police partner admitted that they could not enter an area heavily guarded by the mafia. When Yuri and Max were about to leave, the police attacked Max and Yuri instead. They are again attacked by Max's police partner, whom Charles has paid to kill them both. However, Yuri and Max managed to survive the attack and Max's partners were forced to be killed during the shootout.
Duty cup.
After knowing that Yuri could still survive any attack they planned, Oliver advised Charles to release Julia before it was too late. Oliver felt that Yuri wouldn't stop messing around until he got his daughter back. But Charles still didn't want to let Julia go. He felt that with the power and wealth he had, he would not be crushed by the actions of just one person. Max and Yuri came to the port where human trafficking occurred in the evening, and they managed to defeat all of Charles's henchmen with their abilities and tactics. After that, Yuri had to face Oliver, and a fierce battle between the two finally happened. Yuri had a hard time fighting Oliver because Oliver's body was much bigger than his body, but Yuri managed to beat Oliver. Unfortunately, Max was caught by Charles and taken to another place at the same time. Charles and the rest of his henchmen arrived at his hiding place and immediately took Julia with him. Charles still thought that Yuri would never find him. But his assumptions were again wrong. Yuri and Luis managed to find Charles's hiding place and began to kill his henchmen one by one. The battle between Luis and Yuri with Charles's henchmen was quite fierce. Even though Yuri and Luis were alone, they could defeat all of Charles's henchmen. After Yuri managed to get past all of Charles's henchmen, he finally could find the location of Charles and his daughter. Charles threatens Yuri to kill Julia if Yuri doesn't let him go. However, Yuri and Julia managed to work together, and Charles was shot and killed. After Julia managed to survive, she immediately hugged her father. Yuri, Max and Julia reunite on Christmas Eve and celebrate Christmas together. Julia's wish has been successfully fulfilled by Yuri.